Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, founder of Bixi FinTech for Women and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board Member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode, where I have the profound honor of talking all things telecom with none other than the venerable Leticia Latino. So Leticia is the president and CEO of Neptuno USA, which is a company that she and her family have built, and they have put in place over 10,000 telecom towers and sites all across all of the Americas. So Leticia is also a board member of GTWN and a published author, podcast host, where you can check out her own podcast, Back to Basics, which we will include in our show notes. So a bit about Leticia. She's on the board of a lot of nonprofits and for-profit companies, including the U.S. National Wireless Safety Alliance. And maybe we'll get a little bit into what a lot of these board memberships mean in the course of our conversation today. She's also served on several FCC committees, and her work has taken her to become part of the Telecom Interagency Working Group, which presented a report to the U.S. Congress about the state of broadband workforce. This is an issue that Leticia is super passionate about, so much so that her contribution to this year's The Mobile Century magazine was entitled "The Role of Digital Humanism in Shaping the Future of the Telecom Workforce." So, Leticia, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for having me, Rosalia. It's such a pleasure. I'm super excited about this podcast series. It's just truly amazing and exciting to see what you have already produced, and then the best is yet to come. I'm a firm believer of that.
Well, the best is right in front of me. So let's jump right in. I'm really curious about, with this global obsession of artificial intelligence, why are you focusing on the workforce?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say the global obsession is with technology itself, which I think it's a great thing because this is part of the industry we're in. It's like we always want to see what's new, what's exciting, the new phone. I think it's the nature of human beings is we want to feel we're making progress. And but at the meantime, and I shared this a little bit on my article, is coming from a family-owned business. My father founded Neptuno in South America in the early 70s. And so I was raised going to a construction site, and I joke around like safety was not the same that it is today. So I was allowed to play with the ground, and so I really had a first row seat to workforce, to the technicians that make the magic happen. And it really breaks my heart to see that because the commoditization of the service, we take it for granted and we're forgetting the men and women that are there, rain or shine, really enabling our communications. And no matter how good the technology is, no matter how many advancements there are, unless we create a way to place antennas on top of a 300-meter tower, we're still going to need the workforce. So I'm very passionate about not allowing people to forget that these people are there doing important work for us.
I actually am so glad that you mentioned that. One of the things that one of the really unique things about the GTWN Now podcast is we actually invite the people building the infrastructure of technology and communications, right? So everybody around the world knows about what they see in front of them, right? The layer two, the Facebook sitting in front of them, or the WhatsApp, or the Starlink satellites showing on YouTube. They don't think about often that they're still at the back end has to just be some infrastructure. And there's human beings who have to lay quite literally this groundwork from on top of, over our earth to on top of, the ground, like all of the telecom antennas that you mentioned, to the subsea cables that most people don't even think about when they so casually log on to their WhatsApp to send, a friend a meme, right? And so I really like that you are bringing to the fore the actual human beings involved in building this infrastructure, without which we would not be able to have all of this layer two technology. And I do feel like, the layer two gets a lot of attention and the workforce doesn't. So, as a contribution to the Mobile Century magazine this year, I thought it was so critical that, particularly in the face of discussing AI, which is normally contextualized as a replacement to the workforce, you really emphasize this. There's certain things that just cannot be replaced. And some of it is just the hard yard of building a telecom tower that works. So I'm really, I really love that you highlighted that in this issue. One of the recent times that we saw each other, most recently, was in Barcelona for the 2025 Mobile World Congress. On the sidelines of that, we had an opportunity to talk about what are some things that we observed. What are some really interesting, unique changes. I mean, this is Spain's biggest event, and it's one of the world's biggest event. Tens of thousands, if not, I believe it was 100,000 attendees were there. We had heads of state, ministers from all over the world. The Mobile World Congress really is, again, it's part of the infrastructure that keeps us all together, and it's a standard setting, opportunity, right? You've gone to so many in the course of your career. Can you give me, what's your hot take from this year's MWC? What did you notice? What are some things that stood out? This was my first MWC. So I had expectations, and then there was the reality of what I saw. So I'd really love to hear, in your wide experience, what did you observe unique to 2025 that has differed in the last handful of years, and maybe some trends that we can look out for in the future?
Yeah, no, it was a great event. Yeah, I've been doing it since it was in France, so I'm dating myself, but the early 2000s. And it's always been fascinating to see, right? So definitely it's not an infrastructure event anymore. It's more applications. We saw, of course, we had been seeing for a few years about AI, but I think what was different as a trend this year is you really could touch more of what's coming, right? Like you see automated drones. This is something my company has been working like on digital twins before the digital twin term was coined. Back in 2007, we were already virtualizing telecommunication sites, and we were doing with ground lasers, but now there's the drone that can fly automated, and I saw them on the floor of Barcelona. So I think, are going through from talking to showing more. I think the hype was more tangible this year, where you can see applications really working on the floor, all sorts of automation, robots, drones. And to me, the biggest trend, because we as a company are working on it too, it's AI agents, like the messaging about chatbots and AI agents as a vehicle to deliver information and to optimize operation, I think was very present at the conference this year. So that is exciting, because it's definitely, we are in disruptive mode. I believe we are changing the way we're working. It's a unique opportunity to revisit how we've done things And again, to go back to the workforce, which is kind of interconnected, or it is interconnected, is technology, is no good unless we use it to better how we live and how we work. And so we have to find a way to provide the right tools to the workforce. And that's also part of my article. It's all this innovation is there. How can we ensure that we use it in a way that our workforce keeps safe, and that really we bring all that good innovation to the field, and to really optimize the entire back-to-back process. But that to me was what good it was. I thought it was going to be more about 6G, which I'm happy it wasn't, because I think we hyped 5G so much and we're still struggling to see the tangible use cases for 5G, that I actually was happy that the AI component of things and how we can use it was more present at the event. And then the last thing I will say in terms of change, I've definitely seen a change on the regulators and the legislative representatives through the ministerial program that is now a big part of the conference that wasn't there in such a big way in the past.
Mm.
So, we had the FCC chairman attending, we had the Argentine regulator attend, people I've known, like we work closely into how can we make things better. And it's just good to see, because regulation is such a big part of what needs to happen now. We
Hmm.
are doing a lot of things for which laws doesn't exist. For AI, like how do you, regulate AI use and all this good stuff. So it was just great to see that part of the conference has taken such a predominant place.
That's really interesting. Can I ask you to elaborate a little bit more at the intersection of when you mentioned, you know, technology is only useful if it's helping us, right? And then you'd mentioned one of the big trends you saw was the chatbots. I also saw actual robots at the conference, and they were, multitudinous. Maybe could you maybe elaborate specifically in your industry, right? The infrastructure building, where you see AI chatbots might be able to support the workforce.
That's a great question. We are actually have developed one of the best, I think, the first chatbots for telecom, in the sense where one of the biggest problem we have in the industry, especially on the deployment side, is information is not reliable. Like it
Mm,
changes so fast that when a technician goes to a site and needs to change something, be it fiber, be it wireless, regardless of the technology, truth is, and anybody that deals with that on a daily basis, like I do, would tell you that the field workers do not find the site as supposed to be per drawings or per asset tracking software. It's never what they tell us we're going to find. And that creates huge problems, huge cost impact. And so if the technology is there to enable us to stay on top of the information and the reliability of the
mm,
information more accurately, and we just ask for, what am I going to find, and it's accurate, that's a game changer. Like if I don't have to go into a big database and find out the data, but I just go and say, now we say, Alexa, hey, what am I going to find here? And it's accurate. That's going to be a game changer.
Oh, that's really when you mentioned that complementarity between the workforce and technology. It's, very much AI is not going to, it's not at the moment able to replace the actual worker, but can make their job a lot easier, a lot less frustrating, and a lot more efficient. That's really interesting. Um, Maybe I'd also kind of want to pick your brain on the Mobile Century. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the article, what inspired you to write it, what are you trying to advocate for? Um, and we'll get into a little bit about what does it mean now in today's context, given all of the changes that you just mentioned.
Yeah, one of the things I admire about GTWN and what we're trying to do, and even the magazine, is that more and more, like the board members, we're bringing our own unique perspective. And as you know, if anybody has read the articles, which I highly encourage, they all come from a very different perspective because we all live in very different realities, right? Where I'm more involved on the field services contracting side of the house, and some of my peers are, more on the technology side. So when I always try to write about things, that have impact, that are important, and something I like to raise awareness about. So I'm not gonna lie, when I heard the subject or the theme was digital humanism, I'm like, okay, I need to search this up. Like I think I know what it is, but I really need to understand what the concept is about. And so, I said that it champions the idea that technology should be developed and deployed with human welfare as the primary concern, stressing the importance of creating a balanced ecosystem where humans and technology work in synergy. And I say, oh, I love it. Because again, I'm so passionate on the workforce side, and I've been working alongside the FCC in several committees, as I mentioned. It's like almost like I found a pathway into this has always concerned me, and now I have
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
platform to do good and to
Hmm.
raise awareness. And it's just like the way it has shaped up is amazing. And in doing that, I had the opportunity to climb a tower with FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who is super passionate about the workforce. He's been climbing towers for years and helping highlight the important work the workforce does. And then we brought people, legislators from, and this is Nate, the Infrastructure Communications Association, brought lawmakers and legislation from Capitol Hill, both from the House and the Senate side, to the field so that they could climb with us, and they could, we could raise awareness. It was such a beautiful experience. So for the article, I say, okay, there's this very high level concept of digital
Yes, yes, yes,
humanism.
yes.
There's a strong fact, which means a lot of people at the C level also don't have visibility about the challenges of contracting firms, field services firms that ultimately hire the workers into what am I asking them to do? I can say
Yes.
I want 1,000 sites upgraded with the newest technology that we saw on the show. Well, do we have the workforce for that?
Hmm.
Or is
Hmm.
the workforce trained for that? How am I transitioning? So the ask and the reality,
Hmm.
in my
Hmm.
view, are disconnected. And
Hmm.
we need to bring that closer in terms of the challenges. And so on the AI side, I say it's not only saying now we're going to use this technology, which is great, fantastic, but how does that impact the worker? So I made the example of, for example, virtual reality. I can climb a tower with a helmet that now allows me to maybe virtually see what I need to fix, which is
Yes, yes,
great.
yes.
I think the technology is fantastic, but then things like how much does the helmet weigh? So because I'm a tower climber now, I have to climb the tower with extra equipment. Maybe I'm distracted now because I have a helmet that now has technology, and I'm working at heights, which is the deadliest job in the US. I mean, there's so many components. So my article tackles a little bit on that. Like we have a responsibility to bring technology in, but we have to do it responsibly so that our workforce is still safe and it works for them, and we don't give them yet another thing to do. Like a lot of platforms and apps that we are asking our workforce to update the data, they have to do it on the go as they're doing the job. So in many cases, it actually makes them unsafer because they cannot focus on the job at hand.
Yeah.
So I thought that with the experience that we had done with Chairman Carr and Nate, bringing people on the ground, it was a perfect full circle example of what we're trying to achieve, which is making more efficient work through technology, but also bringing legislators and people that have real impact, real power into making things better, be aware of the challenges.
I think, and shameless plug, Leticia's article actually features some of the photos of her on top of a tower, which gave me vertigo. Um, I, I think it was obviously that was a lot of people only think of technology as that for the second layer, what I see in front of me on my phone. And, it's so powerful to take those who are responsible for protecting the workforce and say, here, you give it a try. And it is terrifying because I am afraid of heights. Even if you're not, I doubt most people would take this up as employment who are somewhat fear-based like I am. And I thought it was such a powerful thing to say, well, why don't you give it a try? And not only give it a try as in, if you think it's so easy, give it a try, but to really start to understand this is so much more complicated. And AI actually brings an opportunity to make this safer and less complicated for the workforce. And I have to admit, I think this has been one of the only conversations I've ever heard of where AI and a human workforce is not just said to be, oh, complementary for the sake of it, but actually really is looking at empowering the workforce as opposed to inevitably trying to take away their job, because there are certain things that just cannot be done by somebody without the skill set to be able to, like you said, climb the tower and fix it and have that experience base to know something seems off. I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep trying to identify a problem. So I think I really like that about your article. I thought it was spot on, probably one of the more spot on pieces regarding how to make technology better for humanity. And then you mentioned, you've been to MWC as you dated yourself over the last couple of decades. And
Yeah.
the Mobile Century is in its 10th year, I believe, of publication. So it's also spanning across 2 decades. Obviously, GTWN is much older. It, predates Y2K. And the founders are still very much part of the organization. And I often like to ask kind of, with every passing year, like, how have you seen this change so much? The publication is called the Mobile Century. A century is 100 years, and we're a quarter of the way through. So, from your vantage point, high above a telecom tower,
Mhm.
um, how have you seen the evolution over the last 25 years? Have we met the expectations? Are we a quarter of a century past? Are we a quarter of a century to our end goal of what the 22nd century would look like? Where do you think we are now? How far do we have to go? What are some opportunities and what are some dangers that lie ahead?
Mm, great question. A lot of good info. Well, first to your point, like while I'm not a founding member of GTWN, I've been in the industry for a long time, and it's just inspiring to see what the vision was for GTWN and how the founding members have been tapping into, let's say, I'm not like in between, I'm not as young as you, but like intergenerational
Absolutely.
expertise that they have brought and created this incredible forum where all our thought leadership, I think that's the biggest thing is the magazine is 10 years old, but even in I believe it's maybe four that I've contributed to, I see change in terms of the ambition that we're bringing to the table in terms of tackling subjects. And as I say, I admit it, when I said digital humanism, I had to look it up because I had an idea of what it is. But I would be responsible if I don't kind of inform myself into what this means. So it's even improving my own knowledge. It improve my own knowledge, and improving that we improve other people's knowledge. So I think where we have come a long way, I think, is precisely in thought leadership and even pushing ourselves as contributors to think further, to think deeper into what the subjects are. I believe that the impact that we want to make in the world has also like been pushed along. So I think it's really, again, the technology is there, the excitement is there. We know satellites is almost coming full circle. I know our founder, that's where she started, and she's a powerhouse. And you've had, of course, had
Yeah.
her, Candace. I've had Candace also on my podcast, which is amazing journey. for anybody that wants to be inspired. But so you see how everything is coming in full circle. But
Yeah.
through the magazine, through Mobile Century, we have been able to cover what's relevant year after year and what's showing up as a trend. So I think that
Mm,
anybody that has been following the progression will find, very encouraging to see that just what has been happening, almost as a testament. What the challenge, in my view, is precisely that we don't get so enthralled into technology, into the sexiness of technology, because, and you said it before, people, this is not going to be a substitute. Human beings, we normally tend to gravitate towards a culture of scarcity, meaning if I have more technology, I'm going to have less jobs. For whatever
mm,
reason,
mhm,
this is how our brain thinks. I'm
mhm.
going to be replaced. I'm not going to have jobs. And so we have to make sure that we live in a culture of abundance. Like AI and technology will enable other things and will make our workforce better and will do more instead of doing less. And so that I think it's the importance of having these articles, the magazine focusing always not only on technology but on the humanity of and how we cross connect both. I think that's one of the things that we should watch for the most.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, Maybe some parting words. You talked about how the GTWN has done a really good job of not only being kind of on top of trends, but integrating newer generations. Ourselves being two of the latter members that have been taken on, and our technologies reflect that, right? Infrastructure, and I'm very much layer two, building an app. I'd love to hear when we hand the baton over, what are maybe three top tips that you would offer to the next generation of technologists? We were very fortunate at our annual board meeting this year. We had some of the next generation joining us as mentees, and my gosh, I'm already really encouraged. I think everything's going to be great in the future. But what would be kind of three tips that you would give to them moving forward? Um, yeah, tips as female technologist into the next half of this global mobile century.
Well, yeah, good, a good question. So I'm gonna lead with my last answer. I'm gonna start there. So lead from a mindset of abundance.
Hmm.
A
I like
lot
that a
of
lot.
people think that if I got this opportunity, I'm gonna protect it and I'm not gonna let anybody else to get the same thing. So pay
Yeah,
it forward. The only way we advance, not only as a gender, but as an industry, is
absolutely.
where we open up to the possibilities with our competitors, with our collaborators, with our workforce. Like think about all stakeholders in your ecosystem and lead with an abundance mindset. There's enough for everybody, and we only do better when we lead from that place. The second thing would be remain curious. Remain curious. Curiosity is the only way how we learn. And because we are in a very changing technology industry, technology always changes, and never be afraid of getting involved in something that maybe is not your area of expertise. But if somebody
Hmm. Hmm.
invited you to a table, don't cut yourself short because you believe that you don't have what it takes, because that's again the normal instinct. The saboteur in us is going to say don't do it when you get an opportunity. So remain curious about knowledge, and then be generous. I think that would be the third thing, would be generous with your time and effort. Like you leading this podcast takes generosity from your time. You have so many things to do. So I thank you. I take the opportunity to thank you for that, because this wouldn't be becoming what it is without your generosity to put more service into what we're doing. And I think we cut ourselves short there too. We think we don't have time. It's not for me, but magic happens when you are of service to others
Absolutely.
and to the industry you're in. You're gonna make connections. You're
Yeah.
gonna make, I mean, and this is a known story. I said on my podcast. I met Candace through her sister, Marcia, because of a nonprofit I'm part of in New York that
Yes.
helps small businesses. And people say, but you're doing this, it has nothing to do with telecom. And I said, no, I just do this because I like to help others. And then who knew that through that sistership, like they will introduce me to Candace, who eventually invited me to be part of GTWN, and who, at the end of the day, yes, has been important in my own career. So,
Yeah.
it's that part of leading with abundance, being curious and learning more, and then just be of service and put your talents to service of others. Those would be my three suggestions. More on the soft skills side, because technology you learn, but the soft skills and the humanity and how you do your work, that you have to work at it.
That was perfect. Nothing else to say after that. Thank you so much, Leticia. That was so insightful. I'm going to include in the show notes those top 3 tips I always like to ask from our industry leaders, particularly those, who've had such illustrious careers, to share that. And as you rightfully mentioned, with this podcast, it's been I get to talk to and meet with amazing women that I otherwise would not have been able to communicate with. So I have gained so much. I often have my phraseology of kind of, how you say it is give to get, give to get. Now, obviously, it's not with the intention of getting, but when you just have that mentality, it usually something always kind of comes back. I don't know what it is, but it's the circularity of an economy. So thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy that we finally got a chance to sit and have this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you at another industry function this year. For all of you watching, please check out the Mobile Century. It's available on GTWN podcast or gtwn.org, our website. You can also follow us at LinkedIn, and I will include all of Leticia's amazing projects in our show notes as well. So you can follow her podcast and get to know her company and see about the amazing advocacy work that she's doing for the telecom workforce. So thank you so much for your work and your inspiration, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Rosalie, thank you so much.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.